Julian's case really is quite extraordinary. The fact that he is up for extradition to the United States on a charge of espionage for publishing the truth about war crimes is extraordinary. The fact that this is the most political charge you can imagine, and he's being extradited under an extradition treaty which starts off by saying that political extradition in political cases is not possible, that is extraordinary. The whole raft of judicial exceptionalism. I can't find a precedent of anybody having been given as long a sentence as Julian was given for bail jumping. We saw that chap, Jack Shepherd, who actually killed somebody on the Thames, not deliberately, but killed somebody, who then ran away and hid. Julian never ran away and hid. And who eventually, on his return from Georgia, was given half the sentence that Julian was given. And that was someone who had killed someone, as opposed to publishing something. We had, in the original Swedish extradition case, we had the Supreme Court ruling that Julian's extradition request from Sweden was valid, even though it didn't come from a judicial authority, because they preferred the French text of the extradition treaty to the English text. And while judicial authority in English did not include a prosecutor, in French it could include a prosecutor. And there's never ever been a legal example in English law of the foreign language version of a treaty being preferred to the English language version of a treaty. Judicial exceptionalism has been used at every stage of the process in the persecution of Julian Assange. Now, many of you here have heard me talk about Julian and his case many times. I was thinking today that I would like to talk from a slightly different perspective than I normally talk on the subject, and that's the perspective of a whistleblower. Julian is a publisher. He's not a whistleblower. He didn't leak any government secrets. I am a whistleblower. I had a career of 21 years in the Foreign Office. 6 years of my career was in the senior management structure of the Foreign Office. And when I came across UK complicity in torture and extraordinary rendition, I decided, as a matter of conscience, that I couldn't go along with it. As the government were denying that extraordinary rendition existed, Jack Straw claimed to Parliament that extraordinary rendition was a conspiracy theory. As the government was denying the existence of extraordinary rendition, I realized that I would have to produce actual evidence in order to get people to believe me, and I accordingly leaked a number of government documents. The first and most important of the government documents I leaked was actually published by the Financial Times. Now then, when I did that, I was well aware that I was taking the risk that if I was caught, I would go to prison. I was perfectly aware of that risk. My main tactic was not to get caught. But of course, if you are somebody like me who had been in government, who had access to top secret material, and who had decided as a matter of conscience that you could not keep the content of that top secret material secret because it revealed illegality, and complicity in torture is illegal in international law. Of course you realize when you take that step, you may go to jail. And I was prepared to go to jail, and I could paper my walls with letters from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and from the Crown solicitors threatening to prosecute me under the Official Secrets Act. To which I always replied, please stop writing me letters. This is my address. I am at home if you wish to arrest me. And nothing ever actually happened. And the reason nothing happened, and I know this because I know this for certain as opposed to as a matter of conjecture, because you don't spend more than 20 years working in an organization without having a lot of friends in that organization. The reason nothing happened was because of a man who we remember too seldom, who now lives in Scotland, who I'm happy to say I'm in contact with, and that's Clive Ponting. Now, if you remember Clive Ponting, he leaked the evidence that the Belgrano was sailing away from the Falklands, not towards the Falklands, at the time it was sunk, and thousands of people were killed. And Clive Ponting was prosecuted under the Official Secrets Act. And there is no doubt whatsoever, and Clive will happily tell you, that he was guilty. He did it, he was guilty. But the jury refused to convict because the jury system, 12 honest citizens, refused to send a man to prison for telling the truth about a war crime. And in my case, I know for sure from eyewitness accounts that Jack Straw decided that they could not prosecute me because they might get a Clive Ponting verdict. And that would make the Official Secrets Act still more of a dead letter. And it would also give even more publicity to their complicity in torture and extraordinary rendition. So I never was prosecuted. But think of this. What they're doing with Julian is the equivalent of if they had prosecuted the editor of the Financial Times, Lionel Barber, for having published what I leaked. And that is absolutely ridiculous. That will be the death of a free media if that is allowed to happen. Journalists do their job. I leaked further supporting material. I had meetings with a number of journalists over the next year or two, and journalists, I include, for example, David Lee, the deputy editor of The Guardian. Journalists were asking me if I had any more documents to reveal and encouraging me to reveal them, because that is the job of a journalist. And if Julian was doing that with Chelsea Manning, Julian was only doing the job of a journalist and no more. And it is dreadful that establishment journalists are not prosecuted for doing precisely the same thing that Julian Assange is doing. And that is the evidence of the malice of the state against Julian Assange. We live in difficult times. You know, if I leaked today, it was 15 years ago now, I'm getting old, it was 15 years ago I leaked the intelligence material on torture and extraordinary rendition. If I did it today, they would prosecute. And I would be prosecuted in a secret court in which the public would not be admitted. And nobody would be allowed to report on the provisions of the court, on what happened in court, because it's a national security case, and there would not be a jury to acquit me. It would be held before just a judge, because it's a national security case. Because the freedom this country used to enjoy, the freedom that allowed Clive Ponting to stay a free man for having done a justified leak, that freedom has been destroyed by the increasing apparatus, security apparatus of the state, which has stripped away ancient freedoms in the name of the war against terrorism. We live in difficult and dangerous times, and we must see the attack on Julian Assange and the prosecution of Julian Assange in the light of the broader attack on civil liberties. And that is why it is essential we all stand with Julian. It is essential this is fought tooth and nail through the courts. His extradition is stopped, and we try to hang on to a freedom fighter. We try to hang on to the right to publish material, and we try to hang on to the right for citizens to know about the lies and the crimes of governments. Thank you very much. Thank you.